Right, we're rolling. On this podcast, we'll be talking about different areas of business and all things marketing. My name is Dave Doyle.
And I'm Dave Alton. This is Social Antics, another marketing podcast.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Social Antics. Recording on Saturday, Dave.
Yeah, that's because you bought a fucking dog. Another one.
Another dog.
We usually record this on a Wednesday, and I was after doing all my research and working very, very hard for hours and hours, slogging to understand what we were going to talk about in the podcast, and I get a message, oh yeah, I'm just after leaving Dublin now, and I've got another dog. We can't do the podcast today. I didn't get the dog
in Dublin. I got the dog, essential services. I was up in Dublin for work, getting me in trouble already. But oh no, the intercounty thing is gone, isn't it?
Yeah, it's gone. Yeah, you're fine. Right, so. Oh no, you're not an illegal person anymore.
No, not an illegal person anymore. No, it's a Cork dog.
What?
It's a Cork dog.
It's a Cork dog?
It's a Cork dog.
What's the dog's name?
Odie.
Why Odie?
I don't know why. It just came up and we liked it. But anyway, we're recording on a Saturday. Not sure what day it's going to go up, but we're recording on a Saturday, which is unusual for us. But anything exciting pop up for you this week?
Exciting is probably stretching it a small bit, but just to touch on a story that we covered a few, weeks ago, months ago. I don't know. I'm not sure at this stage.
Know what the story is, so I can't.
Airbnb. So we said that they were going to cut their marketing budget by about 90%, predominantly in the in the performance marketing stuff. So by performance marketing we mean social media advertising, Google adverts, and so on and so forth. So some of the results are starting to come out for this. So 90% of the brand's traffic to their digital platform has come from unpaid or direct sources, even after making this particular cut, which kind of reinforces that their strategy is working. Their overall year-to-year marketing spend was cut by 28% of Q1 to about $229 million, and this is predominantly reflected again in a decrease in kind of performance marketing. So what Airbnb have said is that their revenue has risen by about 5% year on year to about just under $1 billion in Q1 of this year. And overall they are still on course to post a loss of about $1.2 billion. So again, like all of these tech companies, there is a big issue around whether they're actually sustainable or not long term. Like, people are investing and they're worth what they are because of the potential in the future, but again, Airbnb, Uber, etc., they're all losing an incredible amount of money. Airbnb currently losing about $1.2 billion. So it's interesting, but what they did is that they've actually launched, or a couple of months ago, they launched their first kind of branded campaign for like the last 5 years. They had been mainly focusing on performance marketing, which was called Made Possible by the Host. And I thought it was I actually did a bit of research on it. It's very, very cleverly done. All it does is pick a number of hosts, goes onto people's Instagram feeds, looks at the experience that people had with the hosts on Airbnb, whatever the case was, and then they have a backing track of whatever song that they want and just literally have a slideshow, and they are getting millions of views on this across YouTube, Instagram, and a number of other kind of areas. So
it's an interesting year to do this though. Like, is it the right, like, not that it's not the right year, but like, they're cutting budget in a year that they don't really need to be doing a massive amount in terms of, actually advertising.
No, it's straight. No, I wouldn't be. I would say it's pretty unscientific to be looking at whether this is the right strategy to work or not.
But they're also now they're looking like, so for example, like, I don't know when we covered this, maybe we'll just for argument's sake say 2 months ago. If they're looking at now, we're 2 months in, we have no advertising going out, all this kind of stuff, but next thing, our sales are picking up. Of course your sales are picking up because people
the
are
pandemic. Yeah, exactly. No, it's not that there's correlation and causation are,
and
I've
seen a lot of that lately, that figures are down, figures are this. Of course they are. It's down across the board for a lot of sectors.
It's a weird market environment at the moment. So I think all this shows is that Airbnb are doubling down in terms of their strategy. They are convinced that our brand is strong enough to sustain our business and grow our business based on direct traffic and organic traffic in relation to their brand. And to be fair to them, and we mentioned it last week in relation to Just Eat, Uber Eats, and so on and so forth, and how they're cannibalizing each other because they're spending so much on marketing and advertising. the primary issue that Airbnb are going to have is that they are going to have to become profitable at some point, and therefore they have to make savings and show that their business is sustainable in the long run. One of the most obvious ways to cut that is your marketing budget after you've already built up your brand. So it's an interesting strategy, and as long as they can maintain their as long as they can maintain the amount of traffic and the amount of revenue and grow it organically, and we haven't seen an organic brand growth in a while, realistically speaking. So it's going to be very, very interesting what that does to their valuation over the next 12 months. Because if they can sustain it, they will be one of the most valuable companies
in terms
in the
world. In terms of that industry. It's like, if you think about it, there's not many, like obviously yes, like if you think about it in terms of old new kind of competition, yes, they're in competition with the B&Bs, the hotels, all that kind of stuff. But there's no real, to me anyway, looking from the outside, there's no real competition for them in terms of a platform that does that for private home renting.
No, there's no one else.
So like, is there room for someone else to come in, like from a host point of view, for the person that owns the house? They just need to upload to a new platform in a sense.
They do, but it's very difficult, right? Because like with there's a bit. So if you take Just Eat for example, if you were to launch a new food ordering platform, your purchasers are in the locality within which that platform exists. So you could launch a new food platform in London, and it could work quite well in London on foot of whatever strategy that you have. With Airbnb, you need to cultivate local supply, but then establish a global audience, because obviously people travel, right? So unless you know you are going to a place that services Airbnb, you're not going to go onto Airbnb. Whereas nowadays you're pretty confident that if I'm booking Airbnb, it's global. So for a brand to cultivate that level of searchability, it would be an incredible challenge for them. Now, could you see a scenario where maybe Booking.com or someone like that, who don't have anywhere near the brand power that Airbnb do, they start opening up something? They could, and that would give them a competitive slant, because they've already got the hotels and stuff like that. But then Booking.com aren't very strong on things like experiences, which Airbnb are all about.
Platform.
Exactly, it's more focused on hotels. And to be fair to Airbnb, they have cultivated quite a strong brand in relation to the host in and of themselves, and they do place a lot of emphasis on, if you are hosting someone, you need to almost treat it like a hotel. Like, you do need to treat people correctly. And there was actually an interesting study done by an academic a number of years ago, where it was linked in with the Airbnb campaign of kind of live local when you're abroad kind of a thing. So
live like the locals.
Exactly. So they did a thing where they basically did an analysis of the host's home. And what they found is that in a lot of hosts, they will kind of almost overemphasize the cultural significance of certain things when they're designing their home, or in terms of photography and all that kind of stuff, the photographs that they have. So it really does give you that kind of exaggerated cultural experience that people want, because they don't get it in a hotel. So very, very impressive, I think, in terms of what they have managed to do. But will someone manage to compete? It's going to be very, very difficult. But again, they have to become profitable soon.
Yeah. I think what you kind of mentioned there a few minutes ago in terms of like their campaigns and their online activity, I think their Instagrams is probably one of the nicest feeds to follow. But like, they're putting out all their content is from robbing, basically, from other people's pages of experiences, as you said. Like, but obviously they're picking and choosing the top level stuff.
And a lot of them are cultivated.
It's not Mary down in the West Cork. Like,
no. I've used Airbnb a number of times now. I think they're a great brand and it's a great service and all the rest of it. But like, I remember a number of years ago, probably told the story before, but we went to Reykjavik, being a group of lads, and we showed up to the Airbnb, and your one had forgot to put the key in the fucking lock. So we had nowhere to stay.
Right.
And you're literally ringing Airbnb going, like, we were very young at the time, so we didn't have the, whatever, €1,000 that we needed to go down to the hotel and book it. So like, we needed to get that money in off Airbnb quick, and then try and find a hotel. And it wasn't easy to find a hotel. So like, those things can happen as well. And if something goes wrong, my God, does it go wrong? Like, but overall their brand is very, very strong. And it's a little bit refreshing, I think, because again, like, and any of the listeners will know, I'm big on paid. I think paid is, like, organic growth is very, very hard to achieve, no matter what size your business or your brand is. But Airbnb are really giving it a good go in terms of what they're doing, in terms of their overall brand strategy.
When you talk about brand and stuff like that, it's interesting. Like, even if another competitor comes into the market, and you think about, say, the likes of Google or whatever, like, I think even people are already doing it, like, you know, oh, I'll Airbnb it. Do you know,
yeah.
will that become the phrase of that industry, you know?
Oh, it is.
Local,
It already is. I mean, no one
interesting.
says, "Oh, I'll get a booking.com."
Yeah.
Or I'll get a Trivago. It's not a thing.
yeah.
Like, do you know, people say, "Oh, we get an Airbnb." Like, do you know what I mean? Same way, I get a Halo back in the day, or whatever, Halo taxi. So, like, it's very, very. No, what they've done is very, very strong.
They can sit and retire happy nearly when you get to that level. Like, you know,
Oh, yeah.
that's the top
They
level.
own
really.
the space in the consumer's mind.
There's not many brands that can do that, which is great. So, is there anything else there that kind of popped up for you this week?
Bitcoin are in trouble again.
Things that I don't like talking about because I haven't a clue what it is.
Elon Musk is making decisions and manipulating the market as per usual.
I just love. He's kind of gone that way now. Really on Twitter, he's just kind of putting out random tweets just to stir.
He should be in fucking jail. Is what he should be. It's blatant market manipulation. Now you can argue that Bitcoin isn't a market, it's a currency, but like it's ridiculous. He's been doing this for years and no one is pulling him up on it. Like, when you can manipulate the value of a currency, and let's call it a currency, because it's not, but it's like people are saying that it is, and you can influence that by a tweet. That's dangerous. That's incredibly dangerous.
We've talked about Trump, but like he's up there in terms of that as well.
Oh, he's more, and he's the richest man in the world at the moment. Like, so when you've that level of power, again, rules don't apply to everyone once you've got a few bob. Like, but I mean, so Bitcoin's price fell by about 14% to dip just below about $49,000 per Bitcoin on Wednesday. It rebounded a little bit afterwards to about $50,000 on Thursday. But this is basically after Tesla, who had previously bought about $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin, basically said they won't be putting any more transactions using Bitcoin. And the reason that he gave was because of the rapidly increasing use of fossil fuels for Bitcoin mining and transactions, which at the moment uses more energy than the whole country of Argentina, due to the computer solving complicated calculations, which is basically the backbone of the cryptocurrency. As if he didn't know that already when he initially made that investment. He's
obviously one of the most environmentally friendly guys out there, like, you know.
Who must? Oh, he is, yeah, but his fuck, yeah. Let's launch a rocket to the fucking moon, like, yeah. No, to be fair to Musk, Musk is one of these guys that, is he the kind of person that you need to change the world? He is. He's an innovator, he's iconic, he's very, very forward thinking, but that doesn't mean that he can just get away with this stuff. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's, again, and you can see it at the moment, like I don't know if you involve, like, you're not on TikTok that often, but like literally if you go onto TikTok or Twitter, it's a group of day traders. They won't even call them day traders, so they don't know what they're doing, but they're going on to Revolut, eToro, buying up currency, making a huge amount of money on it, but it's not linked to anything. There's no value of anything. I really just don't. I haven't gotten into it. I don't get it. I don't see how it's a currency. I've no interest in it. Maybe I probably should. Have you gotten involved in it? Yeah. I've got. Look, it's one of those things that.
Will you be buying a Tesla with it?
No, couldn't afford it even if I wanted to. No, look, it's one of those things. I think it's interesting. It's an investment opportunity. Do you know, there's examples there now. Like, there's a new coin out there at the moment called Shiva, and I think if you had invested something like a $5 in Shiva, was it a month ago, it's now worth like $250,000 or something. Do you know what I mean? Like, it is an incredible. It's almost like the
hard
.com
push to get a $5 off someone now. But if you told them we work $250,000 there now,
exactly, yeah, it's like it's one of those things that it's to be fair, no, there's a lot of young people involved in this. Older people don't understand it. They don't understand this idea of that you can't just buy it. You have to buy Bitcoin or buy and transfer that into Binance and use Binance to buy the currency off PancakeSwap if it's not on an exchange. Like, it is a complicated enough process in terms of how we would understand how currencies actually work. But like, for me, like, I'm investing in Ripple, XRP, and a few of the other ones as well. I've got a few quid in Dodge and stuff, or Dogecoin and stuff like that, just because it's funny to watch it more so than anything else. But I mean, there's an intrinsic value in some of these coins in terms of the impact that they can have in the future in terms of how we do business. But other than that, if you're calling something a currency, I fundamentally do not believe until someone is willing to be paid in that currency that it can be considered a currency.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like, I think when you have the likes of, you know, Musk tweeting out that Tesla are now, you know, accepting it, or, you know, you can buy a Tesla car with it, that's one thing to kind of have those stunts. We call them a stunt, but as you said, to have someone actually being paid, like I would not like my weekly wage to be paid through something I've never seen, don't know what it is, can't physically.
But can you imagine can you imagine you get paid on a Friday, and by the Friday evening the value of your paycheck has dropped by 14%? Yeah, now it could also go up the way, but it's so volatile that you can't, like, it's not a currency in terms of how we understand. Now, could it be the way of the future? Absolutely. It could be. It makes sense. It's decentralized. It doesn't have as much linkages with kind of things like central bank, world bank.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, it could be decentralized, and it could be, as you're saying, it's not having links. But the thing is, like, that to me, that's worse. Like, there's no regulation or control on it. Like,
do you want regulation though? Regulation's kind of screwed
over.
At least I know
I have something that's valuable somewhere.
Yeah,
no,
there is. Yeah,
someone just control alt delete on it somewhere. Like,
no. I have to say, no. I absolutely agree with you. So I think it's just from a marketing perspective, more so than ever before. And marketing has been linked with currency fluctuations for years in terms of how a country is positioned vis-a-vis their currency and stuff like that. And we've seen the same with stocks. The story behind Bitcoin it's one of the most incredible, I think, marketing stories of all time, and doggy coin, or whatever you want to call it, is even more so. Like, that coin was created as a joke. It's worthless. It doesn't do anything. Musk is saying now that he's going to work with Dogecoin devs to increase the efficiency of that currency in terms of its ability to process transactions and stuff like that, which again is fine. But it's a pure marketing stunt. Like, for a currency to be developed as a joke, where I think the original founder sold all of his Dogecoin for $100 or something like that back in the day, goes the story. Like, it's an incredible story of something which is completely valueless having so much value. It's like WeWork.
So when you don't show up for a week, I know you're after hitting the big time with a cryptocurrency for.
I'm waiting for it. But it is, like, I have to say, from a gamification point of view, like, I wouldn't. If it was me pension, I wouldn't be investing in it. But it's literally a bit of fun. Like, I mean, like, you can invest. Like, I remember initially when I put it into one particular currency, I put it at 500 quid or something like that. Within like a month, it was up to like $3,500.
See, I'm looking at you going, you fucking bananas, like, even to put that kind of money in. But it's like that thing, as you said, a fiver coming, whatever it's worth, whatever big money it's worth. If someone walked up to me on the street and said, here, give me a fiver, I'm going to turn it into 500 quid. I'd be get away from me.
Yeah, exactly. Because there is value. Like, I mean, I'm up by a distance, more so than I ever would if I was gambling.
And would you cash out, or would you leave it there?
Oh no, I'm leaving it there.
No, cash me out, Sid.
no, because that takes away from the. It's literally a game. It's a game almost. Like, do you mean it's not? It's not like a stock where, for me anyway, it's not a stock where you're looking at what's coming down the line in terms of new product development, consumer trends, all that. Like, if you take Roblox, for example, Roblox is a stock which I own because I like the idea of Roblox, and that it's kind of it's user generated content, which is all Gen Z and all that kind of side of things, without going into it. With cryptocurrency, one, I don't understand it that well at all, and I'm convinced that no one really understands it that well. But yet, it is generating a huge amount of value. Like, and it wouldn't surprise. Again, there are people out there who've become millionaires on the basis of investing a few thousand in nothing. Nothing. So it's an incredible story if you look at it in those kind of ways, like, Yeah.
No, I really, it actually confuses me. I don't get it. Like,
it is confusing. I have to say, I've tried to educate myself. I've tried to understand it. I get it a bit. But to me, it all comes back to put my marketing hat on. There is more. How could I describe it? If you take a stock, right, there's obviously the story that comes with the business, the founder, their vision and stuff like that. And that does impact on the stock. You can see it with Tesla. Mm-hmm. You can see it with Airbnb. They're losing money every year. But there is an intrinsic value ultimately in the technology and the brand and the consumers that they're after cultivating. You can measure all of this stuff and you can see, I understand why that stock is worth this and why it may go up or why it may go down. With the cryptocurrency stuff, my opinion is that it's 90% marketing and story and spin and call it a fad or consumer engagement in it, and only 10% of it is down to the technology. And that's not saying the technology isn't good, but it's that people don't understand it. And therefore, as more people are investing in it, because you hear these stories like I'm saying now, that's increasing the value of the stock. And it could, and the thing is as well with something like an Airbnb is never going to go to zero because there's some intrinsic value there. With something like a Dogecoin, it could go to zero overnight
on the back of a tweet,
on the back of something. Yeah, exactly. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, if there was any kind of like if there's a data breach, you say everything is secured with all these cryptocurrencies. That's one of the benefits of them. If there's any data breach at all, I don't know how that would happen. I don't even know if it's possible. If there was,
but that's the thing. Like, data breach on who? On what?
Yeah. No,
that's not like who actually has this. Like, that's what I just don't.
No, it is I have to say, it is a fascinating. It's a fascinating story, but it goes down to the GameStop stuff that we were on about a couple of weeks ago. Do you know what I mean? People pumping stocks artificially. People know there's no intrinsic value in fucking GameStop of all places. But again, people making a huge amount of money of it. And again, it comes back to this whole idea of the wisdom of crowds. And sheep. Once you have, well, you can call it sheep. You can call it like the sheep are making a hell of a lot of bloody money at the moment. You know, so there's a wisdom of crowds that now more so. Exactly, that's it. Yeah, but they're with the again social media, fucking Reddit, all these things. It gives consumers quite a lot of power to manipulate markets, and that's exciting in one way, but it's also very, very dangerous because, as with all these things, people are going to lose out. Everyone can't win.
Moving on myself, something that I do understand to be social media. So Twitter.
Fucking way to dumb down the conversation.
Dumb down the conversation fairly quick there now because I'm getting out my depth. No, Twitter this week. It was actually pretty big news for the way they operate. They got rid of the whole crop of a picture. Did you see that crop video? Yeah. Kind of got a big bit of news. It was trending the whole lot. Like, you know, I think actually anyone that's in our space in terms of content creation, was pretty happy about this. Did see a lot of people saying still not an edit button though. All we want is an edit button. We didn't ask for crops. We just want an edit button to edit the tweet.
See, the problem to me, it's another, like, because I was talking.
So for anyone that doesn't know what we're on about, basically, Twitter, for as long as I can remember, basically if you put up a picture, they literally kind of cropped it awkwardly.
So it's horizontal,
but very, very slim. It wasn't square. It wasn't anything like that. It was very, very slim. I don't have the technical dimensions for it, but the worst thing about it is you, like, if you put up something on Instagram or YouTube or anything, you can kind of sometimes on some of the platforms you can choose where the thumbnail, what it shows, if it's a bigger picture in the background. With Twitter you couldn't, and sometimes awkwardly cropping stuff. It's gotten people into trouble. You were waiting
to post until you saw what it looked like.
And that's the problem. Then you're taking it down quickly and maybe slightly cropping it a bit more to fit. But basically, it would kind of awkwardly crop it, but now it's showing the full length picture, which is great. It's really, really good. But yeah, as I said, an edit button is what a lot of people are still looking for on Twitter.
See, it makes sense. The problem is that ultimately, so I operate under the assumption that the majority of people don't click on the photographs on Twitter, which they don't, right? So therefore you need it to still fit in that horizontal space. And like it does provide a huge opportunity for designers, because it's kind of like, click on this and then it gives more information or whatever the story is. But ultimately, if you have any information, not photographs now, but actual information, it still needs to fit into that block, otherwise it's going to look crap, right? So it's an opportunity. I think designers are typically happy enough with it, but it's another, for me, I'm kind of looking, it's another thing now that I have to fucking deal with.
It was not thankfully it's not anymore, because even when we were doing the stuff every week for this, we create a portrait one for stories, LinkedIn stories. We create the square one for Instagram, and then depending on how it looks or whatever, we do create the one specifically for Twitter, the horizontal one with the dimensions in there. And because we noticed at the start when we just started, we create a portrait one, we create a landscape one, and we were putting it out and it was just cropping horrible, it just didn't look great. So everyone has that problem when they're coming to putting content on Twitter. So now that's gone, so we can literally cut down our workload each week, Dave.
You can cut down your workload. I fucking hate design. It drives me up the wall.
But they're also they're trying to overall improve how people consume media on Twitter. So they're also actually testing at the moment uploading 4K images, because they weren't allowing that high quality image up before, so they're testing that now as well. And just their overall experience they're trying out. And in terms of Twitter, I actually got involved. I was more so listening to, we've talked about a couple of times now about Twitter Spaces, the audio feature.
I was invited actually to something the other day. I didn't go into it.
You're very kind, you.
No, as in Twitter said, would you experiment with? Wasn't invited. Oh, fuck off.
I'm just going to hope they're not listening to this. But no, I listened into a marketing talk there during the week, and it was kind of between two people. But what was really interesting, it was like, oh, if anyone else wants to speak, let me know. I'll give you access, and and you're seeing people. But it's actually, I think, algorithm wise at the moment, it's given a lot of it's being very open with it. It's given a lot of reach to spaces, because if you go on, if there's any conversations happening, it's up there at the very top in the stories section. So it's just really interesting. It's a new way of doing, like, especially with COVID and stuff at the moment, doing kind of a conference or a kind of a live chat and live talk. It's actually I think it's
I'm planning on looking at them in Clubhouse. It must be dead in the water already. Dead on arrival. And again, it shows you the power of these platforms, right? I would in my mind, and even though there is a Twitter Spaces, and I get the idea of having, like, there is an advantage of having everything in one platform, but I did kind of like the idea of having a separate platform for just the audio stuff. Like, I haven't really engaged with Spaces, because it is in the story section at the top, right? But it's not easy to find things. Clubhouse was better for that. It was more set up for it was set up better for an audio experience. Twitter is kind of a very, very dumbed down beta version of that.
Well, I think I like how it's set up, because it is so simplistic, and so look, it is what it is. Go in, listen, chat, request to talk, a little bit of reactions there for emojis or whatever, and that's it. It's nice and simple. Don't overcomplicate it.
But what I liked about Clubhouse is that you could follow certain people, and the idea was that you wouldn't follow thousands of people, because that you're not going to listen to all this audio content. Whereas now, if it's linked in with Twitter, there are certain people. I'd like a situation whereby you could go in and you could follow people specifically for what they're talking about. Do you know what I mean? So if I take
a marketing expert,
Gary Vaynerchuk or something like that, I could say I want to get notifications when Gary Vaynerchuk is doing a Twitter Spaces.
Yes.
Whereas at the moment, it's all the one. It's all just built into the one inherent platform. Yeah. So I don't. Again, I think Clubhouse dead on arrival makes absolute perfect sense, just on the basis of they didn't have the firepower that Twitter or any of these other kind of social platforms had. But
like what we talked about Airbnb there, like, anyone that comes into the market, when you're going up against these, you're going to need some serious backing behind you. Staying on social, we talked about this as well a few weeks back, but The Guardian done a piece this week, and they called it the social media site that nobody asked for, and it was talking about the Instagram for kids. We talked about it a few times now, but the reason why it was brought back up is just there a few days ago, the Attorney Generals in the US actually sent a letter to Mark Zuckerberg demanding that he abandons the plan, that they're after seriously looking into it, and they want it all scrapped.
Good.
We've talked about it here. I've no disagreements with that, I suppose. I don't think, it's under 13s. 13 is what's allowed on Instagram.
He is a fucking menace.
But basically, Facebook came back and they argued that it's better to have dedicated spaces for children to stop them lying to get on adult sites where there's no parental oversight. And the statement they released was, we want to improve the situation by delivering experiences that give parents visibility and control over what their kids are doing. Absolute bullshit.
Number of reasons. One, when you were a young person, for example, which you're not fucking anymore, what was again, this is before now kids watching, before fucking Facebook and Twitter and all the rest of it. What was the one thing that you and your mates would probably try and do a few times a month? Get into a fucking 18s movie in the cinema. Like, that was a big thing. Because you weren't allowed to get in, and it was almost a challenge to kind of bluff your way to get to fucking theatre. The same thing, if you create something specifically for kids don't like being, particularly between the ages of, like, we say 9, maybe 10 onwards. They don't want to be identified as kids. Yes. So therefore they're going to do this anyway. Secondly, it is complete gateway drug getting them hooked onto it straight away. There is no control for the parents, because the parents don't understand these platforms anyway. And beyond that, this kind of idea of that, it's better for them to become a little bit depressed and a little bit self-conscious earlier in their lives. Like, they should be enforcing controls. If they are saying that, it's better for them, or lying to get on adult platforms, then why don't you police the adult platform and make sure the kids can't fucking get on it?
True.
So they're taking the easy way out, which is better for their brand. Shock, that's what they're going to do.
Following on with literally what you just said, there is another piece there that I saw during the week that was actually TDs here in Ireland. They've, after arguing, some of them, that people need proof of ID when they're setting up a social media account.
Yeah, I am, and the longer this goes on, I think that is what needs to happen. We do it with gambling sites. You do it even with some alcohol apps and stuff like that. There's a huge amount of admin work with it. There's a huge amount of costs associated with that. But guess what? Facebook, one of the most wealthiest companies in the world.
They can afford a few people looking at this.
Exactly. Increase their censorship. Make sure every account is verified. Make sure there's no anonymity at all, and people are held to account.
That's why they said
that's what needs to happen.
They're arguing the social media platforms must be regulated in the same way as publishers such as newspapers and other media, for exactly the reasons you said there. Basically, the anonymity towards like people coming out with racism or hate speech or whatever it is.
Absolutely.
And especially in the last week, this is amplified now with everything that's been going on over in Palestine and all this kind of stuff. Like, it's been riving all through social media. So there is. We are at there is a point, there's a theory behind, I can't remember the theory off the top of my head. There is a point in time whereby humans basically can't cope with technology and how it has advanced. We don't understand it. We still do not understand the impact that social media is having on kids, ourselves. And again, we're very, and I'm probably very bad for this, where I say, it's impacting upon the young people. It's impacting upon fucking adults as well, big time. Huge.
So we don't understand really what the impact of this is going to be, and we probably won't know the impact of it for 20 years. In 20 years time, the history books could read, can you imagine, for upwards of a decade they allowed this platform called Facebook to basically rule the world and have no regulation associated with whatsoever. That's what's possibly going to happen. And it had impacts on currency fluctuations, stocks, fucking votes, election, and no one did anything about it. If you look at it from that lens or that prism, it is absolutely insane. It's good that regulators are starting to maybe pay a bit of attention to it, but they need to actually fucking do something about it. And I'm not really seeing that at the moment.
This whole thing about Instagram for kids, so they had Messenger for kids, it was first brought out from Facebook. That got into a bit of trouble because, everything is technology, there's ways to break it. So people that were not meant to be on it, would say, were getting onto it, and it was causing issues. So now they've kind of cracked down on that. But to basically get this Instagram for kids up and running, they've actually hired the guy that was behind YouTube Kids, who launched that whole platform, that kind of safety protocols and that. They've actually hired him to come on board to help launch it.
I don't know a huge amount about YouTube Kids, to be honest with you.
No, either do I, but I do know it is so when you upload anything to YouTube, there is a section now, right? You upload anything to YouTube, there's a section there that says, is this made for kids, yes or no? If you click that,
there's no possibility that could cause issues.
There's probably more to do with the YouTube for kids, but basically if you're putting up from our point of view, you're throwing up an ad. If you say yes, it's made for kids, you can't. I think if I'm right in saying this now, just from because I don't normally do it, but you won't let you do the whole the clips at the end, in terms of
AdSense and
ads, clicking through all this kind of stuff. So no matter what, it's always no, it's not made for kids.
But this is you have a YouTube. Now, to be fair, YouTube is a social media platform technically, but it's not to the same degree that Facebook is.
Not a communication platform.
Yeah, no, it's not, and it's not made users generate content, but it's limited. A lot more people consume YouTube that aren't creators, whereas the majority of people on social media are creators, even in a wage, or they post something, even if it's not a lot. So there's a different maybe he'll do a great job, I don't fucking know, but I mean, ultimately to me that just sound like there's no plan. And I have no faith in a company to sort out this problem when their solutions thus far have been Messenger for kids, Instagram for kids. We'll create a new platform which creates its whole new other complexity of problems rather than dealing with the issues with the platform that we currently have. And that's a strategic decision that Facebook have taken, which shows that they do not care about it. It's putting bandages over what a very, very big problem. Again, I think it's very, very clear. They're not going to solve the problem. The US government need to go in and tell Facebook that we are either taking control or we're regulating you heavily. And the same for every social media platform going forward. And putting a huge amount of controls around that. And I know we have a couple of possibly guests lined up in the next couple of weeks that would be less negative than I possibly would in terms of social media technology, its impact and so on and so forth. So that'll be an interesting conversation. But look, from the research that's been conducted, from just basic common sense and seeing this technology and how it works, it's very, very dangerous, and it's not getting better.
Yeah, I do think that is definitely an area that needs to be looked at in terms of providing ID on sign up or some sort of verification. Simple. It is very simple.
They do it. Paddy Power do it.
Yeah.
All the gambling sites do it.
Revolut do it as well. They ask you for a selfie and back it up with some sort of form of ID.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just verify every single account. Yeah. Yes, you will have to verify 1 point whatever billion account. So what? Yeah. You probably won't, because a lot of people won't engage then. Mm-hmm. We don't want racist Mary on the platform. She's not willing to verify her account. Fine.
Let anyone that knows, anyone that has a bit of brains about it takes less than 5 minutes to set up a brand new account in the morning.
If within the next 12 months.
Just even actually come out this week, isn't it? About was it TDs here or members of government over in the UK? I can't remember who it was, but basically that they were involved in hate speech accounts on Twitter and all this kind of stuff, like but getting involved in whatever was going on. But like it's like that, like it's so easy just to set up a fake account.
It is simple. And look, let's bring this down. You mentioned Revolut, you mentioned Paddy Power, you mentioned all these kind of things, right? Within the next 12 months, we are going to vaccinate the planet pretty much against a global pandemic. If we can vaccinate the planet and we have the human capacity to create a vaccine, multiple vaccines, vaccinate the planet in a very, very short space of time, we can find a way to verify accounts on social media.
We'll have to set up a campaign.
Yeah, have the fucking political willpower to do it, and then just do it. But the problem is they've been talking about this for so long.
Call the hashtag Vaccinate Facebook.
Hashtag Vaccinate. Oh, wow. Oh, that's fucking great. We're starting it here.
You heard it here first, lads.
Hashtag Vaccinate Facebook. Our dozens of followers are going to start a worldwide campaign.
That's it. We'll get Elon Musk to tweet about it.
Oh, yeah. Fucking that and Dougie kind. But again, it's actually interesting because I'm actually working on a paper at the moment inside UCC or the university that I work for. And we're looking at different generations and how different generations use technology and how that impacts upon conventional norms and values, shall we say. And there's a few things that we've just come up with over the last kind of couple of months when we've been doing this research. So one, Gen Z in particular, and I don't like prescribing layers to generation, but look, let's just do it for the purpose of this conversation. That generation has the ability to disconnect a lot more than we would. And what I mean by that is that if back in the day, if we were playing Crash Bandicoot on PlayStation, what an incredible game, by the way. Yeah. You never assimilated your identity into Crash Bandicoot. You didn't think that you were Crash Bandicoot. You were playing the character of. Now people are playing Fortnite or whatever game, World of Warcraft, and they're assimilating their own identity into those characters, and they're investing in those characters. So therefore, if you don't like your work, you don't like your job, you don't like school, you don't like whatever, you disconnect from that real world reality and you assimilate it into this other character.
This is my world where I'm comfortable.
This is my world. And like, there's nothing wrong with that, but I think there is a question to be at. Like, it is a bit, I find it a bit weird, and maybe I'm just old fashioned. But I do find it a bit weird where people invest more in their digital identity than they do in their real world identity. That can't, over a short period of time, 2, 3, 4, 5 years even, that can be very, very healthy. But as you get older and you have to disconnect from these characters, that then presents a huge issue,
There's two things that popped up. I was only talking to someone during the week that is big into online gaming, PS, PlayStation or whatever it is. And they be doing, whatever game. I'm not into it myself, but the likes of Battlefront and Modern Warfare and all these kind of shooting games, action games. But they were telling me that, they go on, they're obviously having a sort of anonymous avatar, person, picture, name, whatever it is. But they actually, now I don't know this person too well as well, but they were actually saying, like, that they do voice change as well on their voice when they're talking.
Oh, you can manipulate every aspect of yourself.
So they've totally made themselves, as you just said, a totally different person. The second thing that popped up there is when you talk about, like, stepping away and disengaging with certain platforms. If you talk to, say, people that are kind of after launching themselves on social media in, we'll say, the last 2 years, the amount of them that are not on Facebook, that they might not never really set up on Facebook. Some of them nowadays probably might not even be going on to Snapchat. It's gone to that level now. But if you ask anyone of our age, do we use Facebook? No, jeez, I fucking hate it. It's a pain in the ass. Hey, would you get rid of it? Oh no, I couldn't do that. It's become part of what we do now. We can't step away from that because that we'll say that fear of missing out kind of FOMO kind of thing, we won't want to step away from it. Whereas people going onto it now, they're a little bit more, not that they're clued in, but they'll go to the platforms they like and they'll stay with it until something else comes, and then they'll literally get rid of that platform. Whereas we now are all stuck with whatever 5-6 different platforms, we're across them all, which is interesting. Like, Facebook, you're across Facebook, Instagram, and you're connected to the same people, you're seeing the same people's content on different platforms. It's part of what we have grown up with now.
But that affirmation then is again different, right? Because before you'd look for affirmation off of your 4 or 5 mates or whatever the story was. Now you're looking for affirmation from everyone, kind of a thing. And the affirmation isn't as deep, but it's broader, like likes from 100 people better than a compliment from one, which doesn't make any sense. Do you know what I mean? So and
that's actually, when you talk about likes there, Instagram last week actually where they launched a survey on the platform that popped up that should we bring back likes, showing the numbers. I was straight away, no, don't bring them back, much better the way it is. Now you can go on desktop and you can see it and there's ways around it, but there's been no talk about that in the last 12-24 months, however long it's been gone, of people wishing they had the likes. From our game, when it first happened, there was a big thing around, how are we going to do the influencer marketing thing, how are we going to do this, when it wasn't the way it is now. But it was actually interesting that they launched it again during the week to see would people be interested in those coming back.
Brands it's different, but still, if you're talking about, and again I'm not talking about influencers here, or kid influencers or job people. I'm talking about people posting up whatever photo of your new fucking dog or whatever the story is. It doesn't, like, there's the volume of likes, fine, but people are still clicking in and going, who is like this, do you know? Do you know what I mean? So there's that.
You can give it a quick scroll, you kind of get a gauge.
Exactly. Like, so it's again, it's trying to understand, and we don't yet. I'm not saying this is going to be a revolutionary study or anything like that, but it's looking at some of the different social norms that we have in terms of how we interact, how we play, how we do whatever, and how we build relationships, and then looking at how technology has impacted upon that and how it could possibly be exaggerated. Because we're only the start of this. Do you know what I mean? It's not even like Facebook is only around 10 years. Like, you can't see the impact of that for many years to come. So that's going to be very, very interesting. Beyond, there was other things then as well. Communication, in terms of like quick thinking, conversational skills. If you are predominantly communicating with people over a messaging service, you can edit and you can think about what you're going to respond with. If you're talking with someone face to face, you can't do that. No. Do you know what I mean? So you need to have that immediate interaction. We can see it as well, people, and look, maybe this is a bad thing or a good thing, but I mean, like, people not being able to take criticism, that type of thing, because again, everything is fluffy and fucking unicornish on a social media platform. So no, I just think, look, ultimately this comes down to the regulators. There is an element of the horse is bolted about this whole thing, but they need to do something quickly because they've been talking about this for years, you know. So yeah, it's interesting. We have to put a hiatus on, because every week we come back to this topic of Mark Zuckerberg being
something's coming up every week. That's the thing, like, you know. But yeah, hashtag Vaccinate Facebook.
Vaccinate Facebook. I think that's good. I think that's a good. If we had any following whatsoever, that could take off. Yeah.
That now and our millions in the bank with the cryptocurrencies.
That's it. Yeah. We. For fuck's sake, move on.
What else have you got for this week?
Kind of actually moving. It's an area of interest to me. I know it's an area of interest to you as well, of like people who hire, and you hire different generations and stuff like that. So the vice president, or the global vice president for Stella Artois, Tim Oviedo, came out during the week and he was talking about the different generations and how you need to treat different generations where they're being hired into marketing roles. So he basically said that a controlling style of management and leadership leads to compliance, which is what you need in certain roles, but it also leads to disengagement or lack of engagement from your employees. And what he basically said is that, and he was speaking about Gen Z and younger workers in particular, he was said that this demographic were more likely to respond well to flexibility and autonomy, and it was going to help drive what he described as an ownership mentality amongst people and their jobs and the brands that they're looking to cultivate and stuff like that. And I thought that was quite interesting. People looking for different freedoms in the workplace and their careers, and it wasn't necessarily about people who are more lazy or anything like that. He was just saying that people, if you want them if you want them to invest in your company, you need to give them the opportunity and the freedom to invest in your brand themselves and have their own stamp on things, and then you are ultimately going to have more effective employees. And I thought it's an interesting slant, shall we say. And you basically said that, look, marketing in and of itself is still going through a bit of an identity crisis. There's been a complete change to things like advertising models, and business models are changing with the growth of streaming, e-commerce, blah blah blah. And he just felt that with younger generations that look at the world far differently to their older counterparts who would be in CMO roles and director roles and stuff like that, that there needs to be an entirely new approach to how marketing is cultivated from a team's perspective within organizations. I just thought it's an interesting conversation to be had. I think
this whole thing, I think, look, we could probably do one purely maybe someday with someone maybe in HR or something like that around this whole working from home thing. But the whole idea of appreciating freedom, or appreciating, you know, that a boss is giving you a bit of, you know, flexibility to work at home or whatever it is, I think, does that happen? Does that appreciation come from someone that's just out of college? Or flip it on its head, they've been working for a company or any company for 10 years, 15 years, they've been in the workplace, and next thing they're getting the flexibility. Do you know what? You drop the kids to school, start at 10 o'clock, go till 10 to 6, or, you know, don't work on a Thursday, look, it's hard for you, get the job done over the weekend, whatever it is, do you know, work later, as long as the job is done.
The benchmark changes for every generation, basically, and that impacts upon how you view things.
If someone comes into a corporate company of whatever, we'll say 200 people in an office block, next thing you give 20 of those are starting next week, they're all 20 fresh out of college, you know, coming straight in, will they appreciate the level of flexibility that they're getting, or will they take the piss with it if they're not used to the workforce?
And that's a good question. I don't know the answer to it. I think there's two things here. I think there's operational flexibility when you start work, how you start. And look, realistically speaking, anyone who's been in a social media management role, it's not 9 to 5. Like, it's fucking,
no, it's
a catastrophe, to be honest. Which I did those roles before, never again. But like, I think there's a difference in operational flexibility, again, in terms of your starting hours, do you need to clock in, clock out, all that kind of stuff, but then also the freedom and autonomy you have in terms of the work that you do in and of itself. So your ability to go off and create certain types of content, as long as it's within the confines of a strategy or brand guidelines. But how much flexibility do you need, or do you have to run everything up the fucking channel? Do you know what I mean? So I think there's kind of two things going on here. There's the operational flexibility, but then also the kind of the approach to how ideas are cultivated and implemented and executed within organizations. Because I think
when it comes to idea creation and, you know, brainstorming, there's nothing better than being in a room with a few people.
100% agree.
A whiteboard on the wall and just trashing out ideas for an hour or two. You know, and we've done those sessions before with businesses that we've been working with, and there's nothing better. You cannot do that online,
and you can't do it by yourself. Is the main thing.
No, I think I always find it's much better when I'm talking to people. You come up with a bit more ideas when you can trash, because someone will say something or you'll say something and they'll bounce back off you. You know, and I just think that's the way. The best for me personally, like, you know, some people are better off locked in a dark room on their own to come up with ideas. You know, but for me personally, and probably you as well, you're much better bouncing ideas off people.
But that needs to be empowered as well. So, like, what I often found is that, and this is again the positive and negative of group work. So if you take a group, and I've seen it happen so many occasions where you get a management team in a room or a group of marketers, it doesn't matter who they are, and they come up with an idea, and the majority of the meeting is spent trying to convince themselves that a terrible idea is actually a good one. So I think there has to be within that a safe space whereby if you have, let's say, a group of grey-haired men, shall we say, and they come up with an idea and this is what we go after, and you have a Gen Z marketer in the room, them being empowered enough to say, lad, you're talking shite. This is not going to work for those reasons. Whereas, again, and I think that's what the freedom bit comes in, is that you need to somehow create a culture of people being willing to be disruptive, but not to the point whereby it's chaotic, do you know? And that's a fine balance between the two. Like, you'll have some people who just say, oh, every idea is fucking terrible. You'll have other people say, oh, every idea is great. So getting that balance between, again, the generation, again, the business model, the strategy side of things, with the execution, the ideas and the campaign kind of side of things. I think that's a very, very interesting, and again, I think like if it's not something that I would say that I know a huge amount about, or that I would be specialist in, but it would be interesting to get someone in to actually talk about that, and with marketing in particular, because it's a creative space.
We've done it, like, where we've been in meetings before, these kind of creative sessions, we'll say, and either you or me will take almost, sometimes it's a referee role nearly, but like, you know, that kind of what's the word I'm looking for, kind of not chair kind of role, but, you know, kind of managing the meeting, and just making sure it flows nice. And I think that's where, you know, people like us kind of come in handy with that, because you're kind of seeing it from both sides, if that makes sense, you know, which is, and you're just kind of able to guide the conversations to know, look, what are you saying there, you know. And I think any organization that is going down the route of doing these kind of empowering, you know, they're thinking about, right, how are we going to manage the team, how are we going to get ideas out, having good creative session days, well, look, obviously it has to be online nowadays, but having the creative session days and looking at someone to be a voice in the room that kind of manages it, you know, and kind of brings everyone along.
I think you're right, but I think ultimately it comes down to culture. Like, I've seen it where, and the difference is stark. Like, if you go into small organizations, relatively small, let's say they're turning over 5-10 million a year, just hypothetically, small marketing team, let's say two, three people,
never more than 5, really,
and there's the owner and the boss and a small management team, and they're all kind of closely knit, and that culture kind of naturally emerges, and therefore they don't mind, you know, criticizing ideas or coming forward their own. They're empowered naturally within those organizations. And I would say that more often than not in SMEs, if you've got a good strong CEO and good founders there, that kind of culture is typically nurtured. You go into a corporate environment and the energy is just sucked out of the room. And I've seen it with people who are some of the best students that I've ever come across go into a corporate organization, and all of a sudden they're a shell of themselves within 12 months because they're not empowered or given the freedoms or the autonomy. And if they're not given the freedoms and the autonomy, they won't feel like they have ownership, and they don't feel like they're contributing, and therefore they don't care. Effectively, it becomes
they don't care, and they don't move up the ladder.
It becomes a checkbook job where you're just doing it for the pay, as opposed to doing it because you want to get onto your next job. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I'd always say to my crew, first job that you get is not going to be the job that you want. Second job that you're going to get is not the job that you want. But every job should be seen as a stepping stone in a certain direction. And for you to have that mentality of buying into building your own portfolio almost over a kind of a period of time is something that you need to do. But again, organizations need to give you the ability to do that. You can't just force your organization to behave in a certain way, you know, no matter how good you are.
No, it's good. I think we definitely, we might look at trying to get someone in that whole kind of workspace, and that kind of even the working from home thing as well.
Living at work.
Living at work. Was there anything else for you? I'm kind of out of news, I suppose.
I think that's probably a good enough way to end. I've got a few other bits and pieces, but you know what? I'm sick of you as well. Go home and play with your dog.
I will do.
And interview someone for your other podcast.
Are you giving the plug? Are you? Come on, right? We'll leave it at that. Thanks very much for listening. Talk to you next week.
See you later, guys.